That's it.
So I am the self of Buddha Kesha, seated in the hearts of all, is dealing with the question with regarding ritual. So ritual really is meant to lead you inward. The whole etymological idea of mandir or temple is derived from manasa, mind, something that leads the mind inward. You take traditionally a temple, you'll find it is a series of outer courtyards ending up in what's called a garbha, or an inner sanctum, an inner womb, if you will, where the deity resides. So you can walk around there thinking that you are going inwards, something like the labyrinth. And with each courtyard you're going in internally, more subtly, a more immense area to a more truthful area, more real, more solid, more stable, more joyful, with each level of entrance. And so it's the same thing with any of the ritual, it can take you there. So in the beginning I encourage everybody to do some form of ritual, even if it's lighting a lamp. And I think I mentioned before, in one of the classes anyhow, see the Zen Buddhists, what they do is, they actually worship, they bow down and prostrate and make a salutation to the seat that they're going to meditate on. Something sacred is going to happen there. That is a ritual, of course. Arranging the seat is a ritual. Making sure you sit properly is a ritual. A meditation is like taking a flight. You make preparation, and most of the so-called general term meditation is really making a preparation for a situation where nearness becomes oneness. So you can compare it to a flight above the clouds. And on the way, you're preparing the runway, having the equipment already of something like an airplane, body-mind complex. There's something like a car that you can mobilize. Construct a nice runway, take your time over it. Don't be in a hurry. So previously now, this evening, we did a guided meditation, which exactly took you on that progress, step-by-step route inward. And done in such a way that it had no religious axe to grind. It can be applied to anybody, regardless of whether you're a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Christian, whatever religion it is, or even a scientific atheist. The same thing can be applied. But I want to start then with this chapter, because unusually what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the end and the last three stanzas to give you a broad brush idea of what is going to come next. And there's a question that can be asked, which is, how does the knower of the ultimate, that we can call conveniently God, view the world? Because you see, it is tempting to make these diversifications and say maybe there are two things. Maybe on the one side there's this absolute transcendent entity, and on the other side is an immanent entity. In the heretical, deemed to be heretical schools of early Christianity, I think it was Manichaeism, something like that, there was the idea that maybe there are two gods. Maybe there's an Old Testament God and a New Testament God. And the Old Testament God, very bad. New Testament God, good chap. So, like that. So there's a temptation to make this diversification, and the emphasis must be there, that there's only a one. Oneness is there. When somebody says, you see, this philosophy of Hinduism, we understand, it emphasizes oneness, but Hinduism itself is polytheistic. There's a big mistake. No, it's not polytheistic. Not only is it monotheistic, but it's monistic also. It transcends monotheism also. So, in answer to this question, this stanza goes, Yada yada vibhuti mat sattvam srimad urjitam evada tat tat eva vagachatam mama tejo sham tejo sham bhavam. Yeah, bhavam, that's it. Teja amsa sambhavam, manifestation With a part of my splendor, I manifest this universe with a meaning. Whatever being there is, glorious, prosperous, or powerful, know that to have sprung, teja amsa sambhavam, from a part or a spark of my splendor. You can recall it actually from the English translation we give you, divine glories there, from a spark of my divine. It's mentioned as a kind of chorus there, you know. So that's very important to keep in mind. Now what does it mean? Well, let's look at the vastness of the universe. In the ancient days, we didn't have the privilege of looking at the universe in depth. And I mentioned before how the Hubble Space Telescope saw a blank area of space, something like a square inch, like a postage stamp in the lens, and measured it over a period of time and discovered thousands and thousands of sparkling bodies, thousands of luminaries. And these luminaries were galaxies. Not so long ago, mere 100 years or so ago, people didn't think there were other galaxies. When you looked out beyond this framework and looked into the sky, we saw all these shining things. We thought they were stars belonging to one thing, our own galaxy. And we saw that there was a limit there. Even prior to that, we thought that the solar system is all we have. And some people took the view, geocentric view. And then from Copernicus and so on, we adopted this Surya view that the solar system is how it is, and the sun is at the center of everything, and the earth and everything rotates around it. And mathematically, that made perfect sense. You can then see and measure all the ellipses which are going on. So can you imagine what is a light year? I don't know. Imagine 186,000 miles per second is the speed of light, and you can now calculate that to be from
10 trillion kilometers.
Something like that. There we are, 10 trillion kilometers. Yeah, see, if you take a backpack, you'll be there forever. So the diameter of the known visible universe is something like 93 trillion light years.
Billion.
Billion,
Yeah.
sorry, billion. 93 billion light years.
In the known universe.
In the known universe. Yeah. Calculated from the Hubble telescope to see, okay, if that's that, and assuming that everything is even all around us, whichever direction you go in, it'll all be the same. And you can calculate the mass of all of that as well, by the way. But you can see, okay, in the visible universe, and we can only see something like 13, 14 billion years away. So that's an interesting thing. Now we go to the other scale of things. So from a spark of my splendor, all of this hugely, seemingly infinite universe comes. So can we measure the vastness of that? It's incomprehensible. Even the universe that we mentioned, 93 billion light years across, is incomprehensible. We take another incomprehensible thing, that 43 billion of a billionth of a centimeter is the size, estimated size of a quark, the smallest known component of the nucleus of an atom.
43 billionth.
43 billionths of a billionth of a centimeter.
Sure, it's not a millimeter now.
No. So we have no idea what that is. It just boggles the mind, you see. So anything beyond that, can you imagine something more immense than that, and therefore, whatever being there is, glorious, prosperous, or powerful, that we leave that on the one side, know that to have sprung, but from a spark of my splendor. Now can we imagine what is there that is glorious, what is there that is prosperous, and what is there that is powerful? A galaxy spinning, I suppose, is powerful. The attraction of an electron to a proton is powerful. If we were to have a proton here, or a nucleus here, the size of a basketball, and we said, now where's the electron? From here to approximately Castle Knock. That's where the electron sits. It's about 3.2 kilometers. Castle Knock is about 4, so not quite there. How is it that these two things can relate? Size of a basketball and a fuzzy electron that has no fixed position, dancing around somewhere, being excited somewhere, playing this dance. So there are some things in the universe that we're discovering that are incomprehensible to us. We can put it down on paper, we can put it into words, we can frame it in symbols, but unfortunately it boggles the mind. And yet a spark of my splendor does this, he says. So whatever being there is glorious, is this what I've described not glorious? The sun rising, is it not glorious? Was this not a glorious day? You know how people get excited when somebody exhibits some unusual artistry, singing, dancing, poetry. Something excites us within. Is this not an exhibition of great power? It can be positive and negative also, by the way. You can see how somebody can mesmerize a whole audience and convince them because there's some kind of enthusiastic energy within them. And all energy is only this spark of my splendor. And whenever we see things which are prosperous, you see how Patanjali in his sutras tells us to bless the prosperous, congratulate them, and commiserate with those who are less fortunate, and be indifferent to those who are subject to virtue and vice anyway. I have compassion for everybody. That's the understanding. But we can see much glory around us. We can see much prosperity around us. And we don't have to go far to see powerful things. And the maximum thing that we can visualize, which is powerful, will be this whole universe as it spins. And so the sun's rays, they spread everywhere. They reveal things in their true perspective. The revealing light here is different from the things revealed. But that God is self-revealed, self-effulgent. It doesn't require another thing to light it. It lights all the other things. And he manifests himself as everything. We can begin with a ritual. We can begin with thinking and feeling that that inner self, which religion calls God, sits within everyone. And then we can progress to permeating through, and then as. And these terms here are as, not in. So he manifests himself as everything, as glory, as brilliance, as splendor, as beauty, as power, and so many other divine attributes. He is expressing himself. Whatever catches our imagination, draws our attention, sends us into raptures and infuses bliss into us. That is none but the glory of its author and originator, what we call God. You may listen to a piece of music and tears can flow. And there's no rational explanation for it. Something moves you. You know? It can be something with words or without words. Yes, songs are often sung, and we have no idea what the words are. You know? And we make our own words up. You know? For a long time, there was people who misunderstood the words of a song, and only when they grew up a little bit did they realize, oh, that's what it is, I see. But it's the tune and the whole expression that moved somebody. People spend hours in musical concerts, attracted by that, seeing the power there, seeing the glory there. All the talents and abilities that we find around us that we admire, spontaneously admire, is because we get this glimpse of the splendor. And Sri Ramakrishna says, do you know what is meant by Brahman with divine attributes? It's like a vast expanse of water with waves, ripples, billows, bubbles, sprays, froths, and so on. Forms appearing in Chit Agasha, or the expanse of consciousness, can be experienced. And even the incarnations of God come within this category. It is therefore no surprise that when we see more of a glimpse of the splendor in a holy person, or in an incarnation or something like this, some special manifestation of this divine ocean, that immediately we get an impact. Those who are sensitive to it and accepting of it will immediately find the attunement to this glory and the subsequent transformation that occurs. And so I wanted to deal with these last few stanzas before going back, because when we go back, what we'll do is we'll just explore a number of examples of these manifestations, but it's not the whole thing, it's not the complete thing. It's just a small sample, just a small spark, and that we have to be cognizant of. Atavo bahunayatena kim yantena tava arjuna vishtabhyaham idam krishnam ekam shena stito jagat. So, by what need is there, O Arjun, for this detailed knowledge? You can go on and on and on. We were talking at the retreat that we had on the weekend, a few weekends ago, and I was in full flow, you see, about this glory. And it turned out to be an endless link within, you see. And as soon as I said something, it stimulated another thought, another link, another link. And then I realized that it was a list coming out, you see. And I looked over to Swami Purnananda, he looked at me, and I said, and I could go on and on. And he agreed, of course. But we can, you see. But what's the use of it? A few samples are necessary to stimulate a journey inward to discover the full glory from where this manifestation comes from. So he says, what need is there for this detailed knowledge? Ekamshana, by one part I stand supporting the whole universe with a single fragment, single part of myself. A tiny part, imagine. And so Sri Ramakrishna also says this, God is with form, without form, and also transcending all these. He alone knows who and what he is. So that acts as a kind of framework now. Now we go back. And so bear that in mind when we come now to this. Adityanam aham Vishnu, Jyotisham Ravi Amshumam, Varichir Marutam Asmi, Nakshatranam aham Shashi. Of the Adityas, and this requires some explanation, because much of this description, much of these details describing the manifestations are to do with mythology. But what is mythology? Mythology is telling a story around some principle. And philosophy can pick it up. And we can really go into this in great detail, but it won't be universally comprehensible. So we won't do that. So what are these Adityas? Aditi is the mother of all the luminaries, of all the, what turns out to be in mythology, all the devas are the luminary factors, the gods we might say, and the demons, the rakshasas and so on. And the story of the universe seems to be a tug of war between these two forces. And many of these things that come out, mythological things, are to do with that eternal, this churning of the ocean, that story. And what is the churning of the ocean? The churning of the ocean is your own mind has to be churned. We call this tapasya. Inevitably, it's churned anyway in the wrong way. And we come across this conscience that says, let me do this, let me do that. And sometimes we make a wrong choice, a wrong turn, and we take the consequence. We have no doubt that the cause and the effect are the same thing. What we call the efficient and the material cause is the same thing. And we mentioned this last week also. But what are the Adityas? Aditi, the mother, etymologically, Aditi is that one which is endless, eternal. Among other meanings, that's what it is. Something that is obviously the mother of Surya, the sun, among other luminaries. We can therefore say It is the mother of all luminaries. And the mother of all luminaries, in modern speak, will be essentially radiance. Radiance and time, these two factors. Something that enables a radiation everywhere, things to shine everywhere. And that being shining, all things shine. So Aditya, the Adityas are the products of this. Bear in mind, all of this is only one entity manifested like this, with a small spark of divine splendor. We have to bear that in mind always when describing these things. And then one of the names that come out is Vishnu. And then in modern speak, what would that be? Vishnu is the entire observable universe that we mentioned. That entity which is, we mentioned, 93 billion light years in diameter across. Can't even imagine it. And at the smaller scale, Planck scale is what we call it, at the smaller scale, something like 43 billion of a billionth of a centimeter. And with all the relationships that go with it. So of all the Adityas, that is all the luminaries that come from this expansive, inexhaustible radiance, I am Vishnu, the all-pervading one. Of the luminaries, the radiant sun, of the luminaries that we know related to us, and I am Marichi of the Maruts, and of the asterisms, I am the moon. There are over 40 Maruts, and Marichi is the dominant one. So it's worthwhile reading the commentary here, because all these luminaries that are set before us, even just the sun, we take that much, it regulates our time. And all our reckoning of time is there. And there are 12 Adityas, and these Adityas will represent the different months of the year, the different zodiacal signs. All of these things are there. In short, it represents time, scientifically. So though all flowers, fruits and crops come as manifestations of the same thing, all these manifestations, if we have an exhibition somewhere, at a farmer's market or something, a competition, whose is the biggest pumpkin and so on, we bring out our best. And for this reason, this Vibhuti Yoga is simply bringing out the best examples, that's all. And when we see the best examples, then we see, this is the highest, one of the highest manifestations. This gives us the clue about the expansiveness and glory of that which manifests it. So the whole of this manifested universe is in fact the glory of this Ishvara, this Lord, but the prominent among them, those that arrest the attention of the beholder, are selectively mentioned as Vibhutis. Now this same Aditya assumes 12 names, as I mentioned, 12 months, and for your interest, these names commencing from April are Amsu, Gata, Indra, Arima, Vivasva, Bhaga, Parjanya, Dvashta, Mitra, friend, Vishnu, Varna, and Pusha. And Vishnu, really, in terms of months, is January. Because from there, you'll see the winter solstice has happened in December, and from there on, you'll find the days getting longer. Right now, you'll find the days getting shorter. And that means that winter is leaving and a new sense of joy is coming. And we experience it most in climates such as this. When you come here for the first time, you get the big shock that by 4:30 is all dark. And then in the morning, only at 9 o'clock, the sun decides to yawn and wake up and spread its rays. Of course, but in the summer it's glorious. The sun hangs around, stays with us as our companion way off into the night, 10 o'clock at night, and stays there And in the morning, its shining face comes up, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So it is called Vishnu. Obviously it's the best. And is very much liked for his commencing his course towards the summer solstice progressively and dispelling, you see, the pinch of cold winter. In the Vishnu Sahasranama, the 258th name is also Vishnu, and it's attributed to the sun deity traversing, as it were, the universe as is seen, our world. But we can elaborate it, because that Vishnu himself has become Surya Narayana, and on a universal basis we can say it is the universe itself. The whole universe is shining, not everywhere. Most of it is all dark and diluted. But in contrast to that, we see all these luminaries like small gems sparkling in the night sky. And among the 49 Maruts or wind deities, Marichi is the foremost. The wind causes immense good to the world. Of course, it can also cause immense harm. You just take a hurricane and we'll see, but very powerful. You see, everything that is glorious, everything is powerful. It doesn't say whether the power is, as judged by us, in our favor or not. The best of these wind deities is therefore identified also with Vishwara, and the luminary of the day, of course, is the sun, and the foremost, of course, of the luminaries at night will be the moon, and therefore that also is mentioned. And then it goes on about the Vedas. Vedanam samavedosmi, devanam asmi vashavaha, indriyanam manaschasmi, bhutanam asmi chetanam. Of the Vedas, that is of all these pristine discoveries by rishis that we call Vedas, I am the Saman. Why? Because it is sung, it is chanted, and what a delight therefore to sing it. It is all very well to chant the verses and so on, but when it's set to a certain rhythm, it takes on an extra charm. And so the best of the Vedas is identified. I am Vasava among the Devas. Of the senses I am the mind, and among living beings I am consciousness. These are very significant things. Vasava is the name of Indra. Again, if we were to be scientific about it, and there's an interpretation of this, scientific interpretation by some. Because when Indra combats his enemy, we find his enemy would be maybe surface tension, and Indra would be electronic energy or electrical energy moving outwards. And it's there that we get all these other things, and therefore Indra dominates. So Vasava is another name of Indra. But thought also comes from God. I am the mind. You take away the mind, all the senses have to follow. The mind is the queen bee. So of all the senses, I am the mind. And among living beings, I am consciousness. There's a great argument. What is consciousness? What is life? There was a series of lectures by the prominent physicist Schrödinger at Trinity College here in 1940s. And I think it was last year, they had a conference celebrating his series of lectures that came out in a book, What is Life? Very significant because he predicted there the biological nucleus of an organism that we call DNA. He called it in a different way, but really he had a forecast of it. He prophesied it. He really predicted it, if you will. And there it is. So what is life is a good question. And there are people debating it from all kinds of philosophical angles. What is life? Some say that organisms that you say are living have to have some neurological system, some nervous system, there's some feeling, physical feeling. In the human being, physical feeling, emotional feeling, also rational, intellectual, calculating, a logical mind, a reasoning mind, a discerning mind, all of this man has. So what is this highest manifestation of all this that is living? It must be the one that is most exhibiting consciousness, and that is man. And these are evidences. What we call glories are evidences of this immense entity that we call the Lord of the universe. Is there a reason why things fall? Is there a reason why things fly off? Is there a reason why things don't want to change? Is there a reason why things shine? Is there a reason why there's a balance between gravity and electrical energy? Is there a reason why we have an intellect and are able to reason? It is because we are conscious and we are self-conscious too. And that is a great, great telling evidence of consciousness itself. A sense of humor must surely be evidence of an internal bliss. Among living beings, therefore, I am consciousness. The functioning of all the five senses become purposeless when the mind wanders away. And the difference between the living and the dead, you must have noticed, is in the presence of otherwise of consciousness. So the more evolved the being, the clearer is the consciousness. And ultimately the pure consciousness gets equated with that being that we call God himself. So just as wealth distinguishes the wealthy man, these glories reveal the Lord. So we are now on a meditation trail, because all of this has relevance. All of this is useful meditation material. We can take any of these aspects and see this is manifested glory and trace it back.
Immediately goes within, isn't it?
And go within and go on this inner journey from the outside to the inside. And the outside is not separate, it's a manifested aspect of it.
We only think it is, isn't it?
We think of it because we think in categorical ways. And we think because essentially we are centered around an ego, a sense of individuality, and we assume everything else is individual in relation to it. And
we need your diagram up there on the whiteboard.
That's exactly it. That's exactly
you miss it.
Yeah.
That has to be the emblem of the Ayurveda side.
Yeah. So the diagram says, okay, there's a sphere of operation in which we are, and we can divide it into two halves. And one half is man. Now in this context, we mentioned Adityas, but also Rudras are about to come and so on. But the Rudras, with 11 of them, these would be the common factors of our familiar world. And it's no accident that we have five senses of information, five senses of action, organs of action, and we have the mind. So there's 11 Rudras are there already. So that becomes our familiar world. So in the diagram that you're describing, we can say that that is the two halves of it. Because no point in having senses unless there's a gross world to relate to. So you have the five items in the gross world, and the five gross objects, and then you have five organs of action and five organs of information, and what we laughingly call my mind. And all of that, it relates together, and you can't really have one without the other in this particular sphere, which we can call waking state. So it goes on like that. Rudranam, Samkaraschasmi, Vitesho Yaksharakshasam, Vasunam, Pavakaschasmi, Meruha, Shikarinam Aham. Of the Rudras, I am Shankara. Don't forget, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is telling us in a conversation with Yajnavalkya how many are the deities, the luminaries. And it boils down ultimately 33, and what are those 33? And we find it's these 12 Adityas, 11 Rudras, and we find 8 Vasus. And then of course additionally Indra and Prajapati, which in our modern speak is energy and matter. And all of them are not separate or different from the manifesting entity that we call God. So of the Rudras, I am Shankara. Shankara is one of the epithets there. And of the Yakshas and Rakshas, I am Kubera. We had a great story about Kubera, Lord of Wealth, in relation relation to Ganapati. And of the Vasus, I am Pavaka, and of mountains, I am Meru. Let's take that last statement. Now we have to look a little bit at mythology. Mount Meru, Meru is the place, the mountain, the great mountain where all the deities reside, all these deities reside, something like Athos. So, Mount Meru is there. That's the mythological side. What does it actually mean? Within us is Meru. And in the Tantric Yogic language, we call this Sushumna. Some entity within the spine that represents the whole realm of consciousness. And levels of consciousness are there within it. We call these chakras. And when each level of consciousness gets opened and revealed, then we find we get more and more toward what is more subtle, what is more immense, and what is more real, until ultimately we come across Sahasrara, 1,000-petal lotus in the yogic language, which represents this infinity, represents this union in the yogic language between Shakti and Shiva. Shiva representing the absolute, Shakti representing the manifesting power. Kundali, that which is coiled up. So it is significant that man walks upright to facilitate all of this, and we have to include that in our thankfulness. So Rudras are 11 in number, that much we know. And of course the mythological texts, Puranas, they're not all agreed in naming them consistently, but they're wide accepted names, we have them. And Shankara comes out as the fourth name that is mentioned. Other names are there, of course. The cosmic function of the Rudras is to make men cry. When these Rudras are absent, we cry. How can they be absent? When there is death. When there is death, all these Rudras look lifeless. All the eyes are withdrawn, ears are withdrawn, life breath is withdrawn, all the 5 pranas are withdrawn. And so crying of people in particular is always for gain, either also in prayers or stress. You can say pain or sorrow, reward or punishment, pairs of opposites, choices that we make. The characteristic of the Rudras is to make them cry for stress. That means bereavement. Bereavement is not necessarily a death. When we desire something strongly and we can't get it or we lose it, then we feel grief. But the maximum grief, of course, is when a loved one goes. But the principle is the same. 2 young people fall in love, and then they break up, and what happens? The same grief process. A doctor, medical doctor called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is a great expert in this, or was. She herself has gone on. And you see, she has famously outlined all different stages of grief, ranging from blaming, guilt, denial, anger, all of these things, until there's finally acceptance. And then what about the yakshas? The rakshasas belong to the celestials in mythology, no doubt. The former of these 2 groups are very fond of acquiring wealth, and the latter of hoarding it. Now we bring it away from mythology and bring it to the human level. Many people want to acquire wealth and many people want to hoard it. But we can't take it into the coffin with us. Whoever among men strives for on right lines and saves money becomes a kubera in his own way. Though of a transitory nature, wealth wields power in its own way and is therefore a glory of God. Then Vasus are, as we described, 8 in number. And these are land, water, air, fire, ether, moon, sun, stars, and so on and so forth. They constitute the gross structure of nature, and it's easy as we go through this list to understand how it represents space, or that which dwells in space. Vasu, dwelling. That which dwells in space infers space itself. Now we have the components. Familiar life called rudras. We have time representing as adityas. And we have space represented by vasus. This Mount Meru is believed to be the axis also around the world. So currently the cosmological model that we have is Big Bang. But that is not the Vedic model. The Vedic model is the central axis, noticing that everything rotates, galaxies rotate, Earth rotates, everything is rotating. We assume that there is a standard law where everything rotates, where everything has some kind of angular momentum. Does the universe itself has an angular momentum? And the Vedic physics would say yes, it's like that. And then what it becomes of the cosmological Big Bang? Well, we have to notice that there's a disparity somewhere. So as we notice that, then we have evidence of a rotating universe. And it's not a new idea or an old idea, ignored. No, there are people who are seriously looking for evidence for this rotating universe. If you have a rotating universe, there must be an axis, and this is called Meru. So what we view as expansion may well be the elliptical exaggeration from our point of view that started some 4 or 5 billion years ago. And then we bring it into time and see how that looks according to the system of kalpas and so on. Anyway, whether it's true or not, it gives us a wonderful concept that really everything is subject to a law, everything is rotating, but the central thing, Mount Meru, is represented as the central focal point for our concentration. And then, of course, Prudha Samcha Mukyam Mam Vidi Partha Brahaspatim Senaninam Aham Skandaha Sarasam Asmi Sagaraha. Among Prudasam, among the household priests, Cha and Mukyam, the chief, know, Partha, that I am Brahaspati, the priest of the gods, the deities in mythology. Of priests know me to be the chief, Brahaspati, and of generals I am Skanda, of which Shiva has 2 sons, Ganesh and Skanda. Ganesh represents wisdom, knowledge, and Skanda represents the execution of it, the active side of it. So the active side of it in the universe, the whole dynamic aspect, we call Skanda, and of bodies of water, I'm the ocean. And you look out to the ocean, what an immediate calm we get, because there's an inferred depth of it, there's an inferred aspect of infinity in it, there's an inherent beauty of it. People pay a fortune to get there, to go to the sea and enjoy the waves. But the ocean seems to us unlimited, seems to be unfathomable, and in fact literally was until fairly recently. Now they have discovered the greatest depths of the ocean, something like 9-10 kilometers down. A specialized submarine, highly pressurized submarine, managed to get there and create a wonderful record, having measured now the depth of every single ocean. And so Godhead can be reached only through the right understanding and right execution, that is Skanda and Ganesha, sons of Shiva. And so the ocean also suggests the infinitude of the Lord. Merging the mind in its expanse is a form of the worship of the Almighty. And whenever we hear mystics describe this, we talk about the ocean of bliss, is the way they describe it. Even Krishna, describing his vision of Kali, described as billows and billows of waves engulfing me from all sides, that kind of thing. All right, so we'll go on like that, and we'll try to explain as we go on the various mythological aspects to this, and also the meaning, the deeper philosophical meaning that has an impact on us. And when we give these talks, of course, if it's only principle and not practice, it has not much value. And so it gives us an opportunity to study these passages for ourselves and to see how they can be useful to us in our open-eyed appreciation of the universe itself, seeing the vision of God everywhere, and also in our isolated meditation practice, where we go from the outside to the inside. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Announcements.